At 9:12 a.m., the judge said my name, Senior Analyst Phoebe Jensen. His voice cut through the still air like a verdict before the verdict. Every sound in that courtroom vanished. My stepbrother's grin disappeared. My mother's hand froze halfway through a nervous gesture. The same people who once told me I was too dramatic suddenly had nothing to say. They thought this was just another messy family dispute. They had no idea it was a federal case, with evidence strong enough to silence them for good. Before I tell you how a quiet daughter turned her family's lies into silence, hit that like button and tell me where you're watching from. I need to know I'm not the only one who's ever had to let truth speak louder than family. From the outside, we looked perfect. The kind of family people envy. White picket fence, trimmed hedges, and coordinated Christmas cards that made strangers think we had it all together. My mother, Sandra, made sure of that. She believed peace meant pretending, that silence was love, and that image mattered more than honesty. My stepfather, Gary, went along with it, happy to play his role. And my stepbrother, Mark, her golden boy, was the center of it all. At family dinners, Mom would beam at him like he'd invented sunlight. "Mark just got promoted again," she'd announce, clapping her hands as if the news itself deserved a toast. Mark would raise his glass, grin wide, and say, "Assistant Sales Manager," like it was a royal title. The table would fill with laughter and applause. Everyone joined in. Everyone except me. I'd sit quietly, cutting my chicken, invisible at my own table. Once, I mentioned that I'd completed a federal certification, one that only a handful of analysts ever passed. Gary didn't even look up from his plate. "That's nice, sweetheart," he said, patting my hand absently. "You stick with that little government job of yours. It's safe. Safe." That word came from people who'd never done anything dangerous, never held a secret that could change lives. They didn't know what it was like to spend sleepless nights decoding messages in a soundproof room, the weight of classified intelligence pressing on your chest. But I'd stopped correcting them years ago. When you grow up as the extra child in someone else's family, you learn the language of silence. You learn how to shrink yourself into something that doesn't disrupt the picture. Mom liked it that way. "P," she used to say, "you think too much. Just enjoy life." But she didn't mean my life. She meant hers. Every holiday was the same. Mark would stumble in late, half drunk, dripping with apologies. And Mom would light up like Christmas morning. "Oh, Mark, I'm so glad you made it." If I ever arrived late, she'd check her watch and sigh. Punctuality says a lot about a person, Phoebe. You can live your whole life inside someone else's double standard before realizing it's killing you. It wasn't that they hated me. That would have required seeing me. No, I was invisible, the responsible one. The daughter who didn't need attention, the one who cleaned up without complaint. They mistook my silence for obedience, my distance for peace. But peace without truth isn't peace. It's paralysis. One memory still burns, a summer barbecue, the year before everything fell apart. Mark stood at the grill, bragging to Gary about his latest promotion. The smell of smoke, beer, and cheap Triumph hung in the air. Mom laughed, that carefree, open laugh she saved only for him. When I mentioned that my team's analysis had prevented an overseas attack, she barely glanced at me. "You always make things sound so dramatic, Phoebe. Just relax and enjoy yourself. Dramatic." That word splintered under my skin and stayed there. That night, while they slept, I sat alone on the porch, a mug of black coffee cooling in my hands. Fireflies blinked lazily above the grass. The air was thick with summer and silence. I thought about how, in my world, silence saved lives. But in this house, silence only protected lies. I didn't know it yet, but something inside me had started to harden. Slowly, quietly, into something that could no longer be broken. The next time my mother called me dramatic, it wouldn't be a casual insult over dinner. It would be a sentence she'd regret for the rest of her life. It happened on one of those nights that never should have existed, thick with heat, silence, and the smell of whiskey. It was 4 Huzzarin. When I heard the crash, a glass hitting the counter, followed by Mark's voice slurred, sharp, hungry for a fight. I found him in the kitchen, bathed in the bluish hum of Theffridge light. The air ryer of alcohol and arrogance. He turned when he saw me. Couldn't sleep either, huh? His grin was crooked mean. "What's wrong, agent girl?" Still think you're better than the rest of us. I kept my voice low, careful. You should go to bed, Mark. You've had enough. That was my first mistake, sounding calm. To him, calm meant control, and control was something he couldn't stand. He stepped closer, waving the empty bottle like a prop. You think that little desk job makes you special? You don't even have a life, Phoebe. Mom says you hide behind work because no one wants you around. The words hit harder than they should have. Maybe because they weren't entirely his. They were hers, recycled and sharpened. From the living room, I could hear faint laughter. My mother, my stepfather, they weren't asleep. They were listening. It turned away, reaching for a towel to wipe the counter. Anything to end it. That's when I heard the drawer slide open the scrape of metal against wood. I turned back. He had a screwdriver in his hand. Mark, stop, I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Put it down. He smiled wide and wrong. You're so dramatic. Then he lunged. A white-hot flash tore through my shoulder, sharp, immediate burning. My knees gave out. The floor came up fast and the world went sideways. I could feel the warmth spreading through my shirt, the slickness of blood under my fingers, and over it all I heard laughter. Soft at first, then louder. My mother's voice floating in like poison. Oh, Mark, for God's sake. She probably slipped. Phoebe stopped being so dramatic. The room spun. The walls seemed to close in. Somewhere between pain and disbelief, something in me detached. I remember staring at the ceiling, thinking how quiet the world sounded when you finally stopped expecting anyone to care. Then through the ringing in my ears, I realized I was still breathing, still awake, still in control of at least one thing, what I'd do next. When I opened my eyes again, the world was sterile, white, and humming. The antiseptic smell hit first, then the beeping monitors. My shoulder felt like it was on fire. For a moment, I thought the silence meant safety until I heard her voice. Oh, thank God you're awake, my mother said, her tone rehearsed brittle around the edges. She sat primly beside my bed, hands folded like she was at church. Gary hovered behind her, pretending to look worried. You gave us such a scare, honey. You tripped and fell on the toolbox. Mark feels just awful about it. I stared at her, the words slowly sinking in. I fell. She nodded quickly. Too quickly. You know how clumsy you can be when you're tired. It's no one's fault. That sentence, that perfect practiced rewrite of reality snapped something in me. I could still see the glint of metal, the blood on the tile, her laughter echoing like static. And now she was pretending it never happened. They weren't protecting me. They were protecting him. I forced my expression to stay neutral. My training kicked in like a reflex. Observe, assess, control. Where's Mark? I asked. At home, Gary said. He's been beating himself up all night. You should have seen him crying. Crying? Right. The same man who called me pathetic hours ago. I'll be fine, I said softly, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Can you both give me a minute? Mom smiled, relieved that her version of events had stuck. Of course, sweetheart. We'll bring you some clothes later. They left the room without another glance. The second the door clicked shut, I exhaled, slow, measured. My hand trembled as I reached for my phone on the tray table. The hospital lighting reflected off the black screen, showing a face I barely recognized. Pale, composed eyes colder than I remembered. I unlocked the phone and opened the secured line, the one not even my family knew existed. My fingers moved automatically, muscle memory overriding pain. When the operator answered, I spoke clearly. This is analyst Phoebe Jensen. I'm reporting an assault on a federal employee and the activation of a duress protocol. There was a pause. Confirmed analyst Jensen. Duress code received at 0405 hours. Incident file initiated. Relief didn't come. Not exactly. What I felt was precision. The kind of clarity that only shows up when you stop asking why and start acting on fact. Within hours, a legal liaison from my agency arrived. Anna Rahea. Sharp suit, sharp eyes. All business. She didn't waste time with sympathy. You did the right thing, she said, opening her folder. Your SOS triggered an automatic wellness check. Paramedics found you on the floor with a penetrating wound. Everything's documented. We'll let the evidence speak. I nodded. My voice came out calm. They think this is a family matter. Her lips curved slightly. Then we'll show them it isn't. As she stood to leave, I caught my reflection again in the dark hospital window, shoulder-bandaged eyes unflinching. For the first time, I didn't feel like the invisible daughter. I felt like a weapon with paperwork to prove it. The courtroom smelled like old paper and stale coffee, the kind of place where truth had to fight for oxygen. Rows of wooden benches creaked as people settled, their murmurs fading when the bailiff called my name. I walked in behind my attorney, Anna Reyes, my posture straight, despite the faint ache in my shoulder. Across the aisle sat my mother's stepfather and Mark. He looked freshly scrubbed hair, neatly parted tie, just a bit too tight. The smirk on his face was small, but it was there, the same one he'd worn the night he drove a screwdriver into my skin. Mom's eyes flicked to mine, filled with something between pity and irritation. To her, this was an embarrassing misunderstanding. She told herself the story so many times she believed it. Anna leaned toward me. "He'll go first," she whispered. Let him talk himself into a corner. Mark's lawyer, a local type with shiny shoes and a TV commercial grin, rose dramatically. "Your Honor," he began, "this case has been blown completely out of proportion. It's nothing but a family disagreement. Ms. Jensen, my client's stepsister, has a history of emotional outbursts and exaggerated claims. Even her own mother will testify that she tends to dramatize." I felt the air leave the room for a second. There it was again, that word dramatic. My mother's legacy to me. The lawyer went on, flipping through his notes with theatrical flair. "My client regrets the misunderstanding that led to Ms. Jensen's minor injury, but the evidence clearly shows there was no intent to harm. It was an accident." When he finished, he turned toward my family as if expecting applause. My mother nodded approvingly. Gary exhaled like a man unburdened, and Mark sat back with a Nisi shrug, his hand brushing his tie. Anna didn't move for a beat. Then she stood quietly, deliberately. "Your Honor," she said, "the petitioner would like to enter into evidence Diplomatic Security Service Report number 77 back accompanied by 911 call logs and sworn federal statements." Mark's lawyer laughed under his breath. "Your Honor, this is a domestic dispute, not a federal investigation." The judge, a silver-haired man with weary eyes, raised a brow. "That's quite a claim, counsel. Let's see what this is." Anna handed the sealed folder across. The judge ran his thumb along the edge, noting the official seal before breaking it open. His eyes scanned the first page, then another. The sound of paper shifting filled the silence. Heist's expression changed. First curiosity, then disbelief, and finally something close to anger. "This report," he said, "slowly documents a Level 4 duress protocol activation under the State Department's security framework." He paused, glancing up at Mark. "It states that senior analyst Phoebe Jensen, an employee with federal clearance, transmitted a distress signal at 04:05 hours. The system logged her coordinates and immediately dispatched a wellness team." Whispers rippled through the courtroom. The judge kept reading, his voice steadier now, almost mechanical. Responding paramedics found Miss Jensen Semick conscious on the kitchen floor, with a puncture wound consistent with a Phillips head screwdriver. Her blood was present on both the weapon and her clothing. Toxicology reports show Mr. Mark Jensen's blood alcohol contentat. He lowered the papers, eyes narrowing. "Do you wish to amend your statement, Mr. Jensen?" Mark blinked, his mouth open, then shut. That's not what the judge snapped. Not what happened. Or not what you expected to be recorded." My mother rose halfway from her seat. "Your Honor, this is all a misunderstanding. Phoebe, she's always been sensitive." The judge cut her off with a raised hand. "Sit down, Mrs. Jensen." The weight of the silence that followed was physical. You could feel it pressing against the walls. Anna's voice broke it softly. "Your Honor, we're not pursuing damages. We simply request that the truth be recognized, and that the petitioner be granted a permanent restraining order for her safety." The judge nodded slowly, flipping to the last page of the report. He read something silently, then looked at me. For a brief second, his expression softened something human behind the authority. "Miss Jensen," he said, "it appears your work may have saved lives in the past. Today your precision saved your own." He turned back toward my stepbrother. "Based on the evidence before this court, I am granting a permanent restraining order and referring this matter to the district attorney's office for formal felony assault charges. Belief, please escort Mr. Jensen from the room." Mark's face went slack pale. He tried to look at me to catch some trace of sympathy, but I had none left to give. He stood only because the bailiff helped him to his feet. My mother's voice cracked. "Phoebe, please. He didn't mean to. He's your brother." Anna stepped between us. "That's close enough." Her tone was calm, final. I didn't move. Didn't speak. For the first time, I wasn't begging anyone to see me. They were finally looking, and it didn't matter anymore. The bafe led Mark out, his wrists bound in steel. My mother sobbed quietly. Gary stared at the floor like he was trying to disappear. The judge gathered his papers. "Court adjourned," he said, voice echoing. As people shuffled out, Anna leaned closer. "You did good," she murmured. "I didn't do anything I said. I just told the truth where it mattered." We stepped into the hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, reflecting off the marble floors. Waiting by the exit were 2 men in dark suits, my colleagues. One of them, Director Evans, gave a small nod. "Glad you're okay, Jensen. We'll handle the paperwork." That was all. No hugs, no sympathy. Just respect the language I'd always wanted to speak. Through the courthouse windows, morning sunlight was breaking through a gray sky. For a moment, I let myself breathe it in. The world outside was the same, but I wasn't. Behind me, I could still hear my mother's voice, faint and desperate, echoing down the corridor. "Phoebe, wait, we need to talk." I didn't turn around. Instead, I walked toward the light, each step, steady, deliberate. My shoulder still ached, but the pain felt different. Now earned, claimed, understood. The truth had done what I never could. It silenced them. Outside the courthouse, the air felt sharper, cleaner. The chaos was still behind me, muffled by stone walls and locked doors. I stood for a moment at the top of the steps, watching people pass who had no idea what had just happened inside. Anna walked beside me, closing her briefcase. "They'll process the charges this afternoon," she said quietly. "You won." "I wasn't playing," I replied. She gave a small, knowing smile. "Exactly." Then she left her heels clicking away until the sound faded. Down the steps, Director Evans waited by a black car phone in hand. He looked up, his nod precise. "Glad you're all right, Jensen. Take the rest of the week off. We'll handle the fallout." "Thank you, sir." That was all we needed to say. In my world, closure came in documents, not hugs. As the car door shut behind him, I looked back at the courthouse one last time. The sun hit the windows, reflecting a flash of white light across the glass, like the final glare of a closing file. For the first time in years, I didn't feel unseen. I felt finished. 1 year later, I stood in a glass-walled briefing room, the city glittering behind me. On the door, Phoebe Jensen, team lead, clandestine threat analysis. My team gathered around the console. Sharp minds, steady hands, the kind of family you earn, not inherit. A faint scar traced my shoulder, a reminder of the night I stopped asking for approval. That morning, an email from my mother appeared in my inbox, long, apologetic, full of excuses. I didn't open it. I just archived it. Some silences are deliberate. If you've ever turned betrayal into power, share your story below and hit subscribe for